Hey everybody, Brian here with Big Owls, and in this video I'm going to show you how to set up a basic leopard gecko terrarium. We'll go through the setup step by step, and I'll provide the links to the products I used in the description below and at the end of the video. So first, let's talk about what size of enclosure you're going to need. If you're planning on getting a baby or juvenile leopard gecko, then starting off with a 10 or 20 gallon terrarium isn't a bad idea because you can always upgrade later. But if you're going to be getting an adult leopard gecko, maybe a 30 or even 40 gallon terrarium is the better option for you, especially if you're going to be keeping a pair of leopard geckos together. I plan on getting an adult male leopard gecko, and I want tons of space for him to be able to roam around in, so I'm going to start with a 40 gallon terrarium. And this size also gives me a lot of options for customizing it, and that's half the fun. Regardless of the size of leopard gecko or the enclosure that you're going to put it in, the necessities of what you need to take care of it properly are exactly the same. So let's start off by talking about heating. Generally speaking, you want to create a heat gradient within your terrarium, a hot side and a cool side. And this will give your leopard gecko the choice of where he's more comfortable at any given moment. The hot side should average around 87 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit during the day, while the cool side should hover somewhere between 78 and 85 degrees. At night, the ambient terrarium temperature should be somewhere between 70 and 75 degrees. It's crucial to use an in-tank thermometer so you can keep an eye on the temperature. There's a large selection of thermometers you can choose from, including sets that also include hygrometers for measuring humidity. If you monitor humidity, be sure it sits between 20 and 40%. Now let's talk about how we can maintain these temperatures for your leopard gecko. The best source of heat for a leopard gecko is an under-tank heating pad. Why? Because unlike reptiles like bearded dragons, leopard geckos don't like to sit and bask in the sun. They're nocturnal and they sleep during the day. So when they come out at night and they walk around, they absorb heat from the ground. That's why an under-tank heating pad is going to more closely mimic their natural environment. So with that in mind, I'm using a medium-sized heat pad and I'm leaving it on 24/7. They come in a variety of sizes to suit whatever size enclosure you have. Now, although leopard geckos aren't basking reptiles, it's not a bad idea to provide a moderate overhead heat and light source during the day. Having a lamp overtop the terrarium will not only help to create a heat gradient and regulate the temperature within the terrarium, but it'll help establish the natural day-night cycle that geckos are used to in the wild. Just don't leave your heat lamp on 24/7, because if you do, you're going to stress out your gecko, you might even harm him. So you know what, turn the lamp on in the morning, turn it off at night, and you'll be fine. Or even better yet, buy a timer. It'll take care of the hard work for you and you don't have to worry about forgetting. For my terrarium setup for my leopard gecko, I'm going to start off by only using an under-tank heat pad at first. I'll monitor the temperatures within the terrarium, and if it's not quite up to snuff, I'll add a 50-watt basking lamp over top, just to warm things up a bit. Now remember, these are general guidelines for you to follow, but your own setup is going to vary a little bit depending on several factors like the size of the enclosure that you're using and your home's average temperature. If you have a very cold home in general, you might want to add more heat to your terrarium. If you have a very warm house, you might not need as much heat. Okay, now let's talk substrate. What a lot of people will use for substrate is simple paper towel on the bottom of their terrarium. Why? Because it's easy for cleanup, it's simple, it's no hassle. But let's face it, it looks ridiculous. I don't like that look at all. I want a more natural look, and I have a few options for what I can use. Option number 1, sand. People will use just sand, despite the fact that leopard geckos come from a more rocky grassland type of environment. Now, sand isn't a bad option, but it does come with a risk of impaction, which means that if your leopard gecko ingests enough of it, he's gonna have digestive problems, it'll block his digestive system, and he could die. So why would your leopard gecko ingest sand? It sounds like a crazy thing to do. Well, maybe he gets a little bit of sand every time he snatches up a cricket, or maybe his nutritional needs aren't being met and he looks for that supplement somewhere else, like the substrate, so he starts eating a little bit of sand to try and supplement his diet. Now that won't be an issue as long as you make sure that your leopard gecko gets everything he needs nutritionally. They shouldn't start eating the substrate. But if you want to play it safe, you do have other options. Option 2. Eco-earth, terrarium moss, or sphagnum moss. Although these substrates are generally made for reptiles that need higher humidity, they're not a far cry from your leopard gecko's natural environment, and they're going to help fulfill any instinct your leopard gecko has for digging and burrowing. Plus, the risk of impaction isn't as high, which is great. Although if you want to completely eliminate the risk of impaction, then we have another option for you that also looks nice and has the convenience of paper towel without looking terrible. Option 3, eco carpet. This material lays down across the bottom of your terrarium and is both absorbent and washable. It looks nicer than paper towel, but it's just as convenient. If you do go with this option, just make sure you clean it weekly as needed. Easy. And there's one final option worth mentioning. Option 4, Zoo Med's excavator clay. This stuff is great because it will allow you to completely customize your Leo's terrarium with caves, caverns, ledges, in any configuration you want. If you decide this option is for you, just be sure to watch our video on how to use excavator clay. You can click right here, or we also have a link down in the description below, so be sure to check that out. Now there's a lot of difference of opinion over which substrate is better for a leopard gecko. Some people believe one thing, other people believe another. Really just do your research and make sure you do what you think is best for your pet. I'll definitely be using excavator clay in the future for my leopard gecko, but for now, to keep my setup fairly basic, I've weighed my options and I'm going to go with EcoEarth. It mimics their natural environment pretty closely, it's non-toxic to them if they do happen to ingest some of it, and well, it just looks good, so that's what I'm going to use. Okay, so we've sorted out our heat and our substrate. Now it's time to talk about hides. Reptiles generally need a dark, quiet, safe place where they can go to get away from heat or light, or if they're feeling stressed out, they can hide in there and de-stress, or they could even sleep in there if they're tired. Generally, you want to keep at least 2 of these hides in your terrarium, one on the warm side, one on the cool side. Leopard geckos also benefit greatly from having a moist hide. Now that's a hide that's stuffed with wet sphagnum moss or something similar that's going to retain moisture and create humidity. This will really come in handy for your leopard gecko when he's ready to shed his skin. It's going to make it a lot easier for him and a little more comfy. Okay, so let's talk about food and water for your leopard gecko. 2 more accessories you need for your terrarium are a food and water dish. You can set these anywhere in your terrarium that are accessible to your pet and also work for the terrarium's feng shui. As far as feeding your leopard gecko, you have a couple options. You can feed them live insects, which is a great option because it mimics their natural environment and forces them to actually hunt their food and helps keep them physically active. But if the prospect of keeping live insects doesn't really work for you, you can try feeding your reptile canned insects. They're not alive, but they do still provide all the nutrients that your pet's going to need. So if you want to give that a try, click this link right here to watch our video on canned insects. You'll learn everything you need to know. Click here. Or down in the description below. We have a link down there too. Remember that in the wild, your leopard gecko would get all the nutrients it needs from a wide variety of insects. So don't feel you just have to feed crickets or just have to feed mealworms. Give your pet some variety. He'll love it and it'll keep him healthier. And don't forget the vitamin supplements. It's very important for your reptile to get these added nutrients, and it's very easy for you to make sure he does. All you have to do is make sure you powder your live or canned insects with these supplements before feeding them. It's super easy. If you're keeping your crickets in a cricket keeper with the black tubes, it's super simple. Just pour the powder into the tubes, shake it up, and feed them to your pet. But you could also pick up a cricket shaker, which will help you and make it easier for you to give these vitamin supplements to your pets. For my leopard gecko, I'm going to feed him live insects with a calcium powder and a multivitamin powder. Alright, we're almost done setting up this basic leopard gecko terrarium, and we have all the elements in place that are crucial for your leopard gecko's health. Now it's time to get a little bit more creative. Decorations. Decorations are not only helpful to give your leopard gecko an interesting environment to live in, but it makes it a lot more interesting for you to look at. And you have a ton of options, like a lot. Choosing the decorations and placing them in the terrarium is one of the best parts of setting up the terrarium, because you get to be completely creative. If you want to create a desert landscape, you can do that, or a rocky grasslands landscape. It's up to you, and we have a million different options for you to choose from. Personally, I'm going to set up my terrarium to mimic the rocky grasslands environment, but have fun with yours. Be completely creative. If you want to browse our decorations, you can click here, or click on the decorations link in the description below, or at the end of the video we'll also have another link. So have fun. And when your terrarium is up and running and you have the proper heat levels, it's time for the really cool part, adding your leopard gecko. And because my terrarium is so large, I've decided to keep 2 leopard geckos together. Just be careful, if you do keep multiple leopard geckos together, they will be in competition for resources such as the hides or the food. So make sure that you provide enough hides where they can live comfortably without having to compete, and make sure you feed them enough so they're not fighting over food. If you keep multiple males together, there's the chance they will become aggressive toward each other. If you keep a male and a female together, there's the chance you could end up with leopard gecko eggs, because that's the circle of life. So just make sure you prepare for that and account for that when making your decision. And that's how you set up a basic leopard gecko terrarium. Remember, this video is a guideline for you, but your setup may vary depending on different factors. Maybe you're going to use a really big terrarium that needs a lot more heating, maybe a smaller terrarium that doesn't need as much heating, maybe your house is very cold or your house is very hot. There are a lot of different factors. So if you have any questions that we can help you with, please leave them in the comment section down below. I know a lot of different people have different opinions on what substrate or what heating is necessary for leopard geckos. Different strokes for different folks, but please, if you have questions, we'd love to answer them. Reach out to us on social media like Facebook or Twitter, and be sure to subscribe to our channel because we have new videos coming out every week. And as always, keep on tanking. Planning on getting... Leopard... All right, we're almost finished setting up this basic leopard gecko... Leopard gecko